report and put it through, turn it in. No, just fill in the fields. That's all we need to do. I'm just trying to cut out a step so you don't have to go and format it and print out a report and put it through, turn it in. I do have something similar in this diagnostics to turn it in that checks between students' work. So you better change a few words if you're going to copy the assignment of each other student, because I will pick that up. I guess if you want to put in your name, authors of the plan, just put your name in here under that section there, authors of the plan. This is really for the business plan when you've got a group or a team working on the business plan. You can put in different names. Yes? Yeah, so just put in one name for that. If you want to put in references, this shows you how much attention I pay to references. I even forgotten a section for references in the business plan, so stick it in the background, under organisation background. Stick your references in there. It's just a free format text field. Some people, the common complaint I've had about 3 or 4 so far, is how do you paste pictures into this these fields? You can do it because I've pasted heaps of pictures in. If you look in the database, the pictures are pasted into our database. Our database holds them. If you paste them straight from Word or anything Microsoft like Paint or Excel or something like that, the amount of garbage that comes in with your picture into the database is it's about twice the volume of the picture. So Word has this issue of attaching a lot of garbage around the picture. The way I've been doing it is I just take the picture, if it's in my Word document, I will save it to the desktop as either a JPEG, a PNG, a BMP file, take that and then cut that into the diagnostic, and that gets rid of the Word garbage. Another student here suggests, what was the solution that you found?
Just compress the image in Word.
Go to Word, compress the image in Word.
Options to change the quality and get rid of the mask.
So right click on the document and you'll get a little options box, and one of them will be compressed. I know I've done it. Because if you cut the picture down, you know how you use that cropping tool? If you crop the picture down, Word will still hold the uncropped bit, but just not show it. So all that garbage will still be attached to the picture. Compress it before you then cut it into this, or paste it into the diagnostic. And I just use Control-V to paste. Yeah? We'll give you an option a bit later on without using Control-C and Control-V. We'll give you a button, but at the moment just use that to paste. Just don't forget the other question I had today on the SWOT analysis. Yes, for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, complete that table where you list the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Also, there's a little bubble chart here in the diagnostic. If you clicked on the bubble chart, you can visualise what's happening with these opportunities and threats too. So you can use that. The reason I want you to visualise things is, which side of the brain am I trying to get you to work on by visualising?
Right.
The right, yeah. So most of it's all on the left side, but I chart a lot of things to sort of make you look the other way and start visualising things, and then it helps you discuss things a bit better. Any other questions about this study? Some students have worked out, and usually it's the Scam Artist students, looking at you, that worked out, I take off 2 marks for every working day. When do you have to hand in the diagnostic? Tuesday. Is it? Or is it Thursday? Friday? Is Friday a working day? No. Is Saturday a working day? No. Is Sunday a working day? No. Is Monday a working day? No. When do you have to hand in the diagnostic, really? Tuesday. And I will take 2 marks off if another student asks me that, okay? I will order it. That's what you'll get the 2 marks off. If you ask me that again, you'll get 2 marks taken off, all right? Yeah. I won't even tell you about it. I'll just do it. All right. So Monday at 11:59 p.m. Yep. Are we cool?
Yeah, very cool.
Okay, very cool. Any other questions? Any other questions on the case study? Anything else? Who else wants to lose some marks?
Next Monday, right?
None? Okay.
Next Monday, yeah.
All right. We last lecture we got up to we were doing competitive advantage, and we worked right through the marketing words. There are about 4 slides for each one of these, so this will be quick. I'm going to go through the operations words to discuss competitive advantage, give you cases about each one of those. Then we'll get on to positioning, finish strategy, and move on to marketing. We'll start doing a lot of theory on product and intellectual property and how to protect it. All right, so just a few quick case studies. This won't take long on operations. And let's have a look at quality. First case study. Again, these are going to be very quick. David worked in his father's chicken processing business over the holidays while he was studying economics at Sydney Uni. He drove trucks, worked in the factory, and he also performed sales roles during the semester breaks. His father then sold the chicken business, which really annoyed David because David thought he was going to go straight into that business and take over. His father then discussed it with David and said, David, what you should do is find a business that takes minimum startup capital and find something that large companies cannot do well. Remember, with competitive advantage, you don't want to go head to head with a large company. You've got to find a little niche, something that the large companies avoid. So his decision came down to this: either start a funeral parlour up or a grocery store. And his wife talked him into starting a grocery or buying a grocery store in Villawood in 1971. Anybody got any ideas? Woolworths? Harris Farm, yeah. David Harris, his objective was to offer the highest quality fresh fruit and vegetables to consumers. This was his life. He'd get up at 2 a.m. every morning, go down to Flemington markets, buy the best quality produce, and then he'd finish the day and get to bed at 7 p.m. And if you've known a grocer, and I've known a couple of grocer friends, that's pretty much their day. They live a funny nocturnal sort of life. He then opened up another store in Pennant Hills, and then 5 more in the early 80s. He'd also expanded his product range and grew from just fruit and vegetables to include meat and dairy and bread. He invested $2 million on a computer system because he wanted to expand into Queensland, and that computer system allowed him to track productivity, how his fruit and vegetables were moving based on shelf space, and that allowed him to expand in 1985. He then sold half his business to a public company to raise further funds to go national. That public company went broke, so he then had to go to the banks and substitute equity for debt. Unfortunately, I don't know if you remember, but in the late 80s, interest rates were at 21%. Under the Keating government, they soared up to about 21%. It drove a lot of companies into receivership, and he was one of the fatalities because he had to put a lot of debt into his company. Anyway, David got back on his feet in 1991, and with the assistance of some equity partners, brought back his stores one by one. The keys to success was purchasing very high quality fresh fruit and vegetables. And some students, some engineering students studied Harris Farm, and we did a business plan for his organisation. And when we had a look at the share register of all of his ownership structure, it was a complete mess, and it's because of that he would invest 50% in the store, and then the people that were operating the store also invested 50%. So it was very much like a franchise business, but it made ownership very difficult. Anyway, the lead buyer is around 80 years of age and has spent 60 years in the purchasing role. He's getting a bit old, so he's just recruited 2 junior 50-year-olds to assist as buyers. So he brought in some new talent. Coles and Woolies move their buyers onto new areas every 2 years. If he says it takes years to work out how to buy fresh fruit and vegetables, and if Coles and Woolies are moving their buyers every 2 years, then what does that say about Woolies' fresh fruit and vegetables? Yeah, it's they're inferior to Harris Farm. Why does Woolies move their buyers every 2 years? They move them, say, from fresh fruit and vegetables into frozen goods, or from frozen goods into the bakery. Why would they do that? So you have a well-rounded manager, it's a career path, that's one reason. Any other reasons? Who said that? They don't get, who doesn't get too comfortable? The buyer? Or Yes, yeah, but if that's sort of around the reason, but can you expand on that a bit?
So they don't become a competitor?
Sorry?
Is it so they don't become a competitor?
They don't become a competitor? Not really, but you're sort of around it. Sorry? Confuse the sellers? That's sort of almost what they do. The reason they swap the buyers all the time, not to confuse the sellers, but to stop them doing that to the sellers, meaning getting kickbacks. Because once you establish a buyer-seller relationship, in order to keep getting your product onto the shelf, the sellers are likely to give them a kickback or a commission. Yeah? So that's why Woolies and Coles rotate their buyers every couple of years. Harris Farm don't do it. They sort of rotate them every like 80 years or something like that. But anyway, this is a case study about quality, and very few organisations, small organisations, have high quality product, but I thought this is an unusual one because they get quality out of experience or the skills of their people. Anyway, he's got 27 stores now, 900 staff, and he's turning over 300 million, still growing. And Thomas Dux is, that's an offshoot of Woolworths. They set Thomas Dux up to take on the Harris Farm market because Harris Farm were getting a bit too much of that market niche. Let's have a quick talk about security. Herman Hollerith founded the tabulating machine company in 1896. He developed a series of automatic punching, tabulating and sorting machines whilst working for the US Census Bureau. So he set this up in 1896. He then merged it with the Computing Scale Corporation, an international time recording company, to set up this company called the Computing Tabulating Recording Company in 1911. Any idea who we're talking about? Yeah, they went into Canada with the new name called the International Business Machines. So IBM was founded in 1915. And that was the industry standard. That's how computers used to work in those days, with a punched card. IBM set the industry standard back in 1928 with this 80-column punched card. So the way, and I've got to say, when I did my first science degree, when I was doing a computer program, I had to load these cards into a deck, and there was no screens to communicate with a PC or with a mainframe. You'd load them into the deck. The machine would suck the cards in, work out whether your program worked or not, and give you a printout on a .matrix printer. So if it didn't work, it would tell you what the errors were. So that's the way computers used to work. Anyway, during the 50s, IBM developed computers for the US Air Force, the SAGE defense system. They worked with MIT, and MIT brought them a lot of technology. IBM didn't create this, but MIT and other research institutes did. They taught them about video displays, magnetic memory, the algebraic computer language, digital to analog conversion. They taught them a lot of stuff. The company, or IBM, built 56 SAGE defense computers at $30 million each. Now, these things wouldn't be as powerful as a PC that you've got today. Anyway, from building those defence computers, they then built the Sabre airline reservation system for American Airlines. I think you've heard about that in a previous case. So IBM built the Sabre reservation system. In '64, IBM had 70% of the mainframe computer market, and they used to call it IBM and the Seven Dwarfs. They had the other 30%. Can you see Microsoft or Intel anywhere there? They weren't even around. Most of the big names that you know in the computer market were not even around. And IBM, this is a case study about security, always had this slogan, nobody ever gets fired for buying IBM. So all of the CIOs, they weren't called them CIOs, or the information directors in those days, usually had a bias to IBM because they knew it was a very secure buy and a low-risk buy. Those Seven Dwarfs, all for the 30% of the market, all got together and formed Unisys. So that's where Unisys came from. The Seven Dwarfs is a viable alternative to IBM. IBM totally dominated the computer industry. As I said, Microsoft, Intel weren't even around in those days, and because just as Microsoft were in trouble for antitrust, IBM also were in trouble for antitrust violations because they had so much market share. After about 20 years of fighting against the US government for antitrust violations, they unbundled their software and hardware in 1969. Before that, the software industry was non-existent. There was not a software industry before 1969. What happened was, when IBM sold a piece of iron, some hardware, you got the software bundled in. Nobody valued software before 69. They really only bought the hardware and the software was just thrown in. Unbundling it then gave the software industry. And IBM was always the low-risk, secure player because it was backed by, or it had done a lot of work for the US government. It was called Hotel Proprietary. You could check out any time you liked, but you could never leave. So that's how IBM marketed. Let's have a look at, that's security. Let's have a look at reliability. In the early 1990s, this company was in danger of collapse. By 91, it had lost 150 million. Sales plummeted from 53,000 cars to 14,000. 53,000 to 14,000 in the space of a couple of years, or a space of 5 or 6 years. Every part was handmade in-house. They benefited from fine craftsmanship, but it was occasionally sloppy and poor quality. Yep. Who? Cadillac? No. Lamborghini? No.
MG?
MG? No? Okay, just remember, sales plummeted from 53,000 to 14,000. They're losing 150 million. An engineer called Wendelin Wedekind joined the company in 1992 as head of production and materials. So he's an engineer. He'd recently been to Japan and saw how they had produced cars and was very impressed with their quality. Wedekind brought a team of Japanese time and motion experts from Toyota across to this company and ruthlessly pulled apart their system. He reduced, a typical engineer, reduced managers by 35%. So engineers have a habit of just coming in and slashing and burning everything. Anyway, Wedekind informed the suppliers also that their quality was off and they had real problems with delivery. So he negotiated better prices on the back of these discussions. They were so impressed with him, he was then appointed next year CEO. So in 12 months, he's then CEO. In the 70s and 80s, yes it is, Porsche attempted line extensions. They tried doing a line extension with the mid-engined 914. They tried that with Volkswagen. They also partnered up with Audi and put a front-engined 924 out there. And then they tried it again with a V8 front-engined 928. They all failed in the market. Do these really look like a Porsche? They look sort of cheapish, don't they, down market? They really, what's a Porsche to you?
Rear engine, rear wheel drive.
It's a rear engine, air-cooled, what's the model? 911. That's what these are what we call product line extensions. And later on when we do positioning, product line extensions tend to fail in the market. That's what a Porsche is. It's the 911. It's a rear engine, air-cooled 911. That's the heritage. And what they tried to do was go down market and introduce cheaper models, and unfortunately failed in the market. Porsche's marketing team were about to supersede the 911, which would probably have killed the company. They were going to bring out a 4-seater saloon and ditch the 911. The engineer, Wedekind, dropped all new model proposals, fired the marketing and sales managers, and then rebuilt the company around the 911. Is that a smart move?
Yeah.
Absolutely. He then brought out the Boxster. Does that look like a Porsche? Yeah, it's pretty much a Porsche but without a hat and just a little bit down market. So he brought out this 2-seater convertible and it looked a bit like the 911, so people immediately identified it as a Porsche. He didn't have enough money to do it himself, so he used a Finnish automotive manufacturer to go and he outsourced production and also the build there. Today, it takes less than half the time to build a Porsche compared to 1992, and the build quality's improved infinitely. The engineers of Porsche are contracted out to Mercedes and Harley and Airbus and a lot of other firms. About $500 million of Porsche's revenue comes from outsourcing the engineers to these other firms, so the engineers have done a pretty good job. Then Wedekind decided, let's see if we can address the sports utility vehicle market. He tried to make it look similar, but that didn't take off. So he brought out the Cayenne, and the ads were, what he's after was, the people that drive Porsches were usually the demographics young males, He wanted to capture them as they're getting older and having a family, and his tagline was "Cancel the vasectomy, drive a Cayenne and have a family too." Anyway, so the Cayenne's really a Touareg, a VW Touareg, but that's the running gear. They put a different body on it and a different engine to make it the fastest SUV in the world. So they partnered up with Volkswagen there. Porsche sold 70,000 cars in 2008. It was the smallest privately owned mass automobile manufacturer in the world. Even Ferrari. Who's Ferrari owned by? Fiat, yeah. So every other small manufacturer of vehicles was owned by a larger parent. So up until 2008, that was still the smallest privately owned organisation. The profit on each Porsche was the highest of all the auto manufacturers in the world. He then tried to release that four-door Panamera, four-door. Does that look like a Porsche? Yeah. Do you think it'll be successful in the market? School's out. I think it looks enough like a 911 to carry it through. He's really trying to take on the Merc CLS with that and the BMW's Gran Turismo. Anyway, this is when he failed as an engineer. He made a takeover bid for VW, which was 15 times larger, so it was a flea trying to swallow an elephant. Porsche increased his shareholding to 50% of VW by 2009. He had to borrow almost 12 billion in debt to buy that number of shares. The GFC hit. He could not go past 50%. No banks would lend him any more. The Porsche and Piech families, the people that owned Porsche, had to bail him out. They sacked him, and then they merged with VW. It was they had got to 50%, and then VW had enough, and then decided to swallow Porsche. They acquired 50% of Porsche for about 5 billion, so they did a backward takeover. So he got a bit too big for his boots and made a mistake financially. So that's an example of reliability. Responsiveness. This is a quick example of somebody that's very close to home. The guy that runs all of our laboratories for engineering owned this business, and it was offered to UTS to go and to own, but they declined, and this guy picked it up. It's solder paste. Solder paste is used to glue the chips and things to a circuit board, to an integrated circuit board. What's solder paste made from? Lead? Not just lead. Lead and tin, yeah. It's a mix of lead and tin. There's about 37% lead and the rest is tin. And the funny thing about solder paste is it's perishable. It has to be stored at, I think it's below about 4 or 5 degrees in an airtight container. So it's got to be kept at low temperatures in a fridge. When you're ready to use the solder paste, say Ericsson buys solder paste and they want to use it, when they're ready to use it, then they warm it to room temperature, and then obviously they use it on the circuit board. But it must be kept at a low temperature, otherwise the mix changes, the composition of the lead and tin changes. Now, the chap that runs all of our laboratories in engineering was offered this business. Normally what a distributor would do was they would order from an overseas manufacturer lead and tin already blended. So they, Ericsson or Sony would ring up and say, look, we want this composition of lead and tin for the solder paste. They would then send that off to their supplier over in Canada or over in Europe somewhere, and they'd bring it in already mixed. So the local importer would then distribute it to the customer, which was the manufacturer of the integrated circuit board. What this chap did, he would bring in the lead separately and the tin separately from overseas, and then mix it locally in Emu Plains, stick it in an esky or a small refrigerated container, and get it across to Western Australia or New South Wales or wherever he had to deliver it from. Has he got a real competitive advantage here?
Yeah.
So what is his competitive advantage? Yeah, absolutely. He's far more responsive, isn't he? Yeah. Now, when I started talking to him, we did a business plan with this chap, and he was going okay in New South Wales. I said, what's your real competitive advantage? And he said, oh, we're technically better, our product and our raw materials are better, and our service, our technical expertise is better, our service is better. What he really was blinded to was the fact that these guys order lead and tin blended, and he can be very responsive in the market. So we changed his marketing from he's the best technically in the market to the fact that he blends it locally and he can get it to you within 4 hours on a plane. He went to the dominant position in Sydney. He then moved into Auckland and also into Melbourne, where most of the manufacturing is, and dominated those markets. He sold the business about 3 years ago. He paid off his house and all of his kids' houses too, and he bought a nursery business for his son up in the Blue Mountains there. So again, it's about responsiveness, this case study, and instead of companies saying, "Oh, we've got the best service," really drill down on that word and find out why you're the best, and then you can go to market leadership. Let's do one about flexibility. Here's an organisation I work with. In fact, I wasn't called in to work with this organisation. Their bank called me in to work with them. Has anybody heard of the International Sports Clothing Company? Yeah? They're over in Botany. They started in 1998. They started making garments for the 2000 Sydney Olympics. They didn't make a lot of money there, and indeed most companies that were working with the Olympics didn't make any money out of it. Then what they did was they signed the Newcastle Knights, which was a deal where they could make jerseys and pants and all of the sporting clothes that the Knights wear. They could make them and then sell them to the Knights fan base. Yeah? So they're the only registered or licensed supplier of garments to the fan base. To do that, they have to give up 10% of the sponsorship, 10% of the revenue as a sponsorship to the Newcastle Knights up front, and then for every jersey that they sell after that, they give 4% of the revenue, so there's commission. But nobody else can make those sort of jerseys. From there, after they signed up the Knights, then they went on in 2001 to sign the Rabbitohs, and then the Roosters, the Raiders and the Eels. Then they did some market development and went into a new sporting code. They went and signed up the Super 14s, the Brumbies, the Force, the Tars and the Reds. Then they did more market development and signed up all of the NBL teams. They're probably the most popular basketball teams here. And then finally they moved into the AFL game and did more market development. Signed up the Cats. They've recently signed up the Sydney Swans and also St Kilda and the Saints. Now, when you're doing a jersey, you have to put it through a graphics design room or an art room. You've got to draw the jersey up the pants. You've also got to work out where the logos go, and if you've got sponsors, you have to work out where the sponsors' logos go. Now, do you think that's all there is to it? Just drawing that jersey in the pants? What else is there? There's manufacturing, but is that the only size? There's all the kids' sizes. So that art room, they have to shorten the sleeves and they have to narrow the garment. So there could be maybe 20 different designs just for one garment to take care of all the kids. And also there's female garments as well as male garments. So it's quite a complex design process when it's in the art room. Now there's their revenue. They started just after the Sydney Olympics, during the Sydney Olympics, and they lost a bit of money in the Olympics, but what do you think of that business by 2005-06? Why isn't it not doing too well?
Profit hasn't increased according to
Yeah, the profit's a little bit lean, isn't it? But sorry, sales good?
Sales very good, the profit's not bad.
Yeah, the profit's not going up, but the sales are going quite well. But it's a little bit well, it's making money, but it's a textile business. They don't make too much money anyway. Now, when you do the market size, I did the market size for this by sporting code. This is for jerseys. About 37% was league, 30-odd% was, 29% was AFL. Rugby union was in for 16%. Soccer was 12%. Cricket, mainly, they've started not wearing white. They used to just wear white, so there wasn't a lot of garments that they could license and sell there for cricket. And NBL was virtually nothing market size. Who were the big players? ISC, this company I'm talking about, was number 2. Canterbury was number 1. They had about 19%. followed by Reebok and Puma and Adidas and Nike, the big names that you know. Now, so that's who owned the NRL teams. ISC had most of the NRL, or 6 or 7 of the NRL teams. Nike, and the rest was spread across the big names. And for the AFL teams, they were all pretty spread across the big names as well. ISC had all the Super 14 teams. I guess what they had was flexibility. That's what this case is about. They had the largest range of garments. They also had a local factory here. If Nike or Reebok are making a garment for one of these teams, where would they get it made? Overseas, yeah, either Malaysia or China or somewhere like that. Now, they could have both overseas imports and also a local factory. So if somebody the Eels wanted a commemorative jersey for a certain game and they needed it next week, this guy could respond because he was so flexible. He could then go and talk to that person and then respond within a week and change the schedule. And I guess the competitors such as Nike and Reebok had a limited product range. They were large companies, quite inflexible. They couldn't handle the special requests. For example, when the Brumbies signed with ISC, they went from 12 product lines. When the Brumbies signed with ISC, they went from 12 product lines to 64, and they were with Canterbury before. So that was quite a large company. It couldn't respond. It wasn't that flexible. I guess where most of the deals got done was in the corporate box at the games on Sunday or on Saturday. He would go there and sit in the corporate box with the people that, the presidents or whoever were running these teams, and then they would put in requests to him to produce these jerseys. So he had to be very quick and very flexible, and that was why he won so much business. That's his organisation structure in 2001. That's him there, the general manager or the MD. They've got some sales. They were in the UK too. The art room is where you design the jerseys, and then they had local production and a warehouse. What does that look like in 2001? Does that look all right?
No.
It's not too bad, yeah, because you're small. It's quite flexible too because what he did was he would not let the salespeople talk to the production people directly. He wanted control over everything, so you had to go through him to get things done. And in 2001, that was okay. Here's the org chart in 2007. What do you think that looks like now? Oh yeah, and he's the bottleneck because he won't let other people talk to each other. He opened up in New Zealand, South Africa, the UK obviously. He also did merchandising, retail, so he integrated forward. He also put imported production as well as local production, but he became the bottleneck. He wouldn't let them talk to each other. And so flexibility works fine when you're small, but when you get bigger, you have to become less flexible, I guess. And why I got called in was they did become less flexible. They were trying to maintain their flexibility, but that mucked up their production lines. And because they were changing it all the time, they created a bottleneck in the factory. Where would you sell jerseys and all these things? At the start of the season or at the end of the season? At the start. So if you missed orders getting them to Rebel Sport, say you missed it by a few weeks, would you get another chance at that?
No.
No, and that's what happened. Because he maintained such flexibility, he choked the factory. They couldn't deliver. They couldn't get it out to the big retailers in time, and so they had real problems. And the bank called me because they went into about a $12 million overdraft. I guess flexibility works great when you're small. When you become larger, you've got to be less flexible. And so what I had to do was we kept the UK going, but we had to close South Africa. We had to close all these retail stores for the Super 14 stores. We had to just very quickly cut a lot of things to get it back into profitability, and they did. And now, as I said, they've expanded. They've got the Sydney Swans now. They've got the Dockers, the Giants. They've really expanded in the AFL as well. So they're still doing quite well. Now, last one, efficiency. I guess that's a typical value chain for a manufacturer, where you go and buy the raw materials, you bring them into your operation, you convert them or value add, get them out through your distribution system, marketing and sales advertises it and lets the customer know where to buy it, and then there might be some after-sales service. And this company, what they did was they had a look at their value chain and decided to create more efficiency in the value chain by ripping cost out of it. So I guess in '53, Ingvar Kamprad opened a furniture showroom in Almhult, which was a railway town in Sweden. Kamprad's strategy was to seriously undercut his competitors by making good quality furniture affordable for the average family. Before it would take you 6 months to go and buy a lounge suite, what he wanted to do was bring that back to about 2 months to buy a lounge suite. Now the Swedish national furniture dealers did not like this, so they boycotted him because he was cutting price. So he had to source outside of Sweden, and he found Poland. Poland was an Eastern Bloc country, and he got it manufactured in an Eastern Bloc country and further reduced his labour costs, so he sourced outside. Kamprad then stumbled on this idea of flat packing furniture. One of his co-workers took the legs off the table, and he found it was much easier to transport. When you're shipping tables in a container, what are you mainly shipping? Air, space, yeah. So if you take the legs off, you can flat pack them, and you're mainly just shipping tables. So you're saving a lot on your transport costs. Also, when he got them to his warehouse, instead of putting the legs on, he stored them that way too. So he could fit a lot more in his warehouse and make a lot more use of his locations. And then he decided, well, instead of assembling them, let's make these things really easy to assemble, and the customer can then transport it and then assemble it at home. I guess so. Did he change this bit of the value chain here? Did he purchase differently? Yeah, he went into the Eastern Bloc, didn't he? Yeah. Did he change that bit of the value chain?
Yes.
Yeah. What's he done there? Flat pack the furniture. Did he change his operations? Did he assemble them himself? No. So he's changed that. Did he distribute them himself?
No.
The customer carries it out, don't they? Yeah, and so what he's done is he's looked at each bit of the value chain and found a way of saving costs. Who are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in 2010, he was turning over 31 billion, made a profit of about 10%, 127,000 employees. But here's the catch. He's worth 23 billion, which is the richest man in Sweden, but it's actually fallen in a year to 6 billion. Because he had some clever legal people to set up a company in Liechtenstein as the IKEA Foundation. And that 23 billion, they've ruled that his family can't get to it. It's in this foundation. So he's really only worth 6. Isn't that a joke? Yeah? Anyway, what a real joke is he's done some product development. He's now expanded into cars. Yeah? And that's he sells cars now, and he gives you a set of Allen keys to put in. So that's competitive advantage done. Let's have a look at how to position, and then we'll finish strategy. And positioning sort of links strategy and competitive advantage into marketing, which is where we're going. Now, in order to have a good competitive advantage and position it, it's got to be worth something to the customer. Efficiency wasn't the thing that was worth anything to that customer. It was the fact that it was reduced in price. That was the thing that was worth something. You've got to be able to be understood to be distinctive from your competitors. It must be easily understood by the customer so you can communicate it. It can't be readily copied. It's got to be affordable and produce profit. And that's what IKEA has done there. Now, the marketplace is full of products and services with weakly branded products that they haven't built a competitive advantage. You don't know them for one word or for it being the highest quality or maybe the smallest, something like that. And these weaker brands are getting killed by the private labels, the Woolworths and Coles coming in, putting their own labels, and it was in the news again this morning, putting their own labels on products. They're taking out the strong brand, the weaker brands. The brands that have built up strong competitive advantages will be able to compete against those private labels. So let's have a look at some strategy. We'll finish off with strategy. If you are the market leader, if you've decided you're the market leader, what's your strategy? Don't ever promote that you are the market leader. Don't say we're number one, because then customers ask, why are they saying that? Why are you saying you're number one? Are you insecure? Yeah. Your job as market leader is to grow the market, expand the whole market. So Campbell's for years have been market leader in soup worldwide. Over 50% of canned soup is Campbell's. And what they do is they don't promote Campbell's, they promote soup itself as being good food. In order for you to try to eat more soup, they're growing the whole market. Microsoft for years have been number one in operating systems, in the Windows operating system. So instead of them just promoting Microsoft, they're promoting the use of personal computers. Have you seen those ads? And they ran a TV campaign where they outline things in white and they show kids playing music with a PC and doing art with a PC. What they're trying to do is not just promote, Microsoft's tiny here. They're trying to grow PCs into other parts of the marketplace or other uses, so they're expanding the whole market. That's what a leader tends to do. So at this part of the life cycle curve, when it's reaching maturity, the job of the leader is to grow the total market, expand it. The other thing you can do is get the generic position for a market. The generic position means when you think of a product, you think of their brand name rather than just the product itself. So who's got the generic position for a tissue? Kleenex, absolutely. It's a brand name, it's not the actual tissue itself. For laminate, it's Laminex, yeah, for ski clothes material. Gore-Tex, yeah, people just say Gore-Tex instead of ski clothes. Cola? Coke, yeah, somebody says Pepsi here, but yeah. Portable cassette recorder, this is an old one, the Walkman, Sony Walkman. So people understood that as the Walkman and that was just the brand name. The MP3, the iPod, and the Bandage?
Band-Aid.
Yeah, Band-Aid. So that's the other job of the leader, to actually convince you that the brand name is the description of the product rather than just the simple product itself. Now, there are two sorts of strategies, offensive and defensive strategies, or attack and defend. Offensive is usually done by the challenger or the number two product or service in the market. Defensive strategies is usually the domain of the leader to defend themselves. Now, the trick is you've got to find, again, a weakness in a competitor's strength if you're going to take them head on, find their Achilles heel and hit that point. Avis lost money for 13 years in a row until they realised, hey, when you go to the airport, there's lots and lots of people queuing for the Hertz car rental desk, very few people queuing for the Avis car rental desk. Why don't we say we are number two? Why don't we say we'll try harder, our queues are shorter at Avis? And so they tried saying that, they said we try harder and the queues at the counter are shorter. And suddenly, what are they trying to promote here? Which competitive advantage? Responsiveness, yeah, absolutely, responsiveness. So Avis made substantial gains when they stopped attacking Hertz head on and started positioning themselves as we try harder and where our queues are shorter. And I guess what you've got to do is be consistent over the years. Year after year, you've got to keep promoting yourself as we try harder. And they're still doing it. They're still doing it. What they did, though, is made a mistake. They decided, hey, we're no longer going to be number two. It's going so well, we might actually become number one. And they promoted that and then lost ground. So you've got to be consistent in your positioning. The worst thing you could possibly do when you're in a race with your competitors is what? Trip them over. Worst thing you can do is what? If you're in a race, a hurdle race.
Look back.
What? How do you trip? Absolutely. Look to the side. Look at where your competitors are. If you're out in front and you look to your competitors, that's when you trip. Exactly right. Yeah? So the best thing you can do is focus on your customer, focus on your competitive advantage, think about your end goal, think about how you're going to win, and just stay focused. Do not look to the side and benchmark yourself against your competitor, because then you're comparing yourself, and that's how you trip and fall. Yeah. McDonald's, strength, it was its franchise system and consistent delivery. Burger King you would know here as Hungry Jack's. The reason it's called Hungry Jack's here is when when Burger King came here to Australia, the name had already gone. So the guy that brought it here, Cowan, I think his name is, decided to register it as Hungry Jack's instead. So how does Hungry Jack's find a weakness in McDonald's strength? Where's McDonald's Achilles heel? How does it advertise it? How does Hungry Jack's advertise itself?
Burgers are better.
The burger, what? What?
The burgers are better.
Burgers are better. How are they better?
At home.
Flame Grill, absolutely. And Burger King launched that against McDonald's. The fact that they're Flame Grill, the Whopper burger, they repositioned McDonald's as fried food, and McDonald's could not rip out thousands of fries and take on Burger King. So they found a weakness in McDonald's strength, which was their consistent delivery, but the fact that they've got fries in everywhere. And that's how they did it. In fact, what are we doing here? Maybe quality. Yeah, I would say they're attacking the taste, aren't they? Yeah, could be quality too. Yeah. Burger King promoted grilling, not frying. 2 million customers switched that year, more than 2 million customers, which was one of the fastest marketing campaigns ever launched. McDonald's and Wendy's then started legal action against them for attacking them head on, and they wanted the ads taken off the air. What does that do for Burger King? Absolutely. And you know these when Coles released the $1 per litre of milk ads, and then there was all this nonsense about it in the news. And do you think Coles was worried about it? And the ACCC were looking at them? That was fantastic for Coles. Even bad publicity is good publicity. Even negative publicity is good publicity. So Burger King then changed its ads a bit later on, stopped attacking McDonald's, and they lost a lot of ground, unfortunately. So the job for a challenger is to be offensive and attack the leader. Now, the leader should really then defend themselves and try to enhance or fortify their competitive advantage rather than build on it. I guess if you're under attack with a low-priced competitor, what should you do? We've used a couple of examples here. If you're under attack from a low-priced competitor coming in, what's the defensive move? Open your own low-cost competitor, and we've seen that with Jetstar. Qantas doing it with Jetstar. Another defensive strategy is to make early announcements about new products. Unisys and all those other companies that I showed you before always came out with new machines a bit earlier than IBM. They were higher tech, they were more innovative. All IBM had to do was go to the chief technical officer, the CIO of the organisation, and say, hey, ours are going to be coming out in 12 months' time. We're the low risk thing, wait for 12 months, even though they didn't have them on the drawing board. So IBM used security a lot. The next one I'm going to skip over because we haven't done that case study. Caroma. There was some noiseless toilets that a guy wanted to bring in from the Middle East. He came and talked to me about it, and we decided let's go out to all of these little bathroom places, these niche bathroom places. And by the way, the noiseless toilets was the flush that was noiseless, nothing else, right? It was just the flush. But we went out to these small bathroom outlets to try to get these toilets in there, and they were all tied up by Caroma. Caroma had them on volume buy arrangements, and so they'd sewn up all the distribution channels. That's another way of defending. What example did we use where they tied up all the best geographic locations? Sorry? Starbucks? Yeah, absolutely. Starbucks is one. Using patents, and probably later on in this lecture I'll talk to you about patents. ResMed's done that, tied up its nasal product with patents, and China's tied up as well with manufacturing. So let's have a look at how to position products and services. There are three major, just going to shut the door, three major classifications here: products, distribution or retail and wholesale, and services. So let's have a look at how to position products first. We'll take those ones first: retail and wholesale and services. So we'll do products. When you're doing a product, focus on the product itself. And when you describe, if you're choosing a feature such as taste or something, always focused on the product itself. Maybe it's the brand related to the product. Maybe it's price, relate them to the product. Even if you're talking about quality or security or reliability, and we looked at each of those words, when you're looking at product positioning, focus on the product itself rather than the organisation. If you want to market your organisation, you can market responsiveness and these things, but it's much weaker to market it than it is to market the product. The product is number one when you're marketing something that you're producing. Some companies decide, let's just market the organisation. The organisation brand is much stronger than the product. Well, that works until you get a competitor that just focuses on the product. And if they come into the market, then their marketing will probably win. So marketing an organisation is much weaker than marketing a product. I'll give you an example. Go out and get me a craft. What do you come back with? Your mum says, go to the store, buy me a craft. What do you come back with?
Cheese.
What do you come back with? Peanut butter? Yep. What else? Cheese? What else do you come back with? Vegemite? Yep. Oreos? You sure? I think they're, aren't they Nestle or something, or Nabisco? What else do you come back with? That's it? Yeah? You come back with either cheese, cheddar cheese, mayonnaise, salad dressing, mayonnaise, peanut butter, and they're not market leader in any of those. But the ones they are market leader in is where they've marketed specifically the product, Vegemite and Philadelphia cream cheese. They always market Vegemite, not as Kraft, but as Vegemite, and Philadelphia is Philadelphia. The Kraft is very small.
Didn't they buy out Vegemite?
Yes, they did. Yeah. But what they've done is the marketing people said that's got such a strong brand, let's just market. Otherwise, they've been marketing Kraft and you'll dilute that brand. So marketing the organisation is quite weak. Marketing the product is very strong. Yeah. Go out and get me a Heinz. What do you come back with?
Baked beans.
Sour cream? You sure? I don't think so. What else do you come back with? Beans? Many times, yeah. What else? Sauce? Yeah. Anything else? Soup? Yeah. Sauce, beans and soup. Globally, they're not market leader in any of those. Yeah. Globally, they're not market leader. So again, they're trying to market the organisation rather than the product. Let's give you one more example, case. Kodak and 3M were leaders in coated paper copiers. Now, you probably don't remember what coated paper copiers were. When I was going to high school, there weren't any plain paper copiers. They were coated. They would produce some pieces of paper out of the photocopy machine that were purple. They had purple ink on them, and they smelled a bit like alcohol. They smelled pretty good, actually. But yeah, they smelled a bit like alcohol, and you'd have to let them dry a bit, otherwise they'd stick. Yeah. But their real competitive advantage was they only cost 1.5 cents to produce, whereas a plain paper copy was about 5 cents. And Chester Carlson, the dry writing process or the xerography process was developed here in New South Wales Uni, but then he commercialised it and invented this plain paper copying process by using static electricity to transfer the images. During the next 10 years, he offered the rights for this process to Kodak and 3M, who were big in coated paper copy, but they didn't want to know. The main reason was it was going to cost too much. It'll cost 5 cents versus that 1.5 cents. He then took it to Haloid in New York, and they got interested. He sold the rights to them. Haloid then changed its name to Haloid Xerox in 1959, and released that to 914, the Xerox 914 plain paper copier. And it was the most successful and most profitable product that came out of the US manufacturing industry. Xerox is now a $22 billion company, much bigger than Kodak. Kodak's dissolved, it's now a $6 billion company. But then Xerox decided, we've got such a strong organisation brand. When you think of Xerox, what do you think of? Photocopiers, yeah. What they did was, they went and bought scientific data systems for $1 billion. They produced computers. They then decided, we've got such a strong brand, we'll call it Xerox Data Systems. How many computers do you think they sold? None, because you identify Xerox as photocopiers. And if you think that's really dumb, IBM did it exactly the same, but the other way around. It bought a copying company and tried to sell photocopiers. How many photocopiers do you think it sold?
No.
None. Yeah, because you know it as a computer company. What you don't do is you just focus on the product and market that. Don't try to market the organisation. Now, you may say, hey, Virgin. Virgin's got a great brand and it's transferred its brand to a whole bunch of different products. Name me one where it's market leader. Think about it. There is one. Name me one. Virgin what? No, it's not the biggest across the Atlantic. That's the only one they haven't taken off yet, have they? Or yeah, Virgin Galactic is their first. So I guess diversification tends to destroy strong brands, and companies tend to be worth more when they're broken up into parts instead of gathered together and marketed together. And this is true of most mergers. AOL and Time Warner merged in the, in the 80s and 90s, less than half the mergers and acquisitions created shareholder value. AOL and Time Warner merged in 2000. It was a $164 billion deal. In 2002, 2 years later, they'd lost 99. So they wiped half of it off in 1 year. HP and Compaq, yeah? In 2002 they merged, $24 billion deal. Have you bought a Compaq PC lately? That was quite a strong brand, just been wiped out, totally wiped out. Daimler-Benz, Chrysler, that merged in 1998, $36 billion deal. And now, I guess because of cultural problems and German and versus the US problems, also their brands. Thank God it hasn't been wiped out, but it's now run by or owned by a private equity company. So don't market the organisation, market the individual products. They're much stronger. And mergers and acquisitions are usually based on cost saving. It's based on a bunch of financial people getting together, working out how to strip out half the organisation and maintain the revenue. The trouble is, when you do a cost reduction strategy, you tend to reduce your revenue much faster than you reduce costs, and you dilute your strong positions. And when you do a deal like that, less than 10% of management time is spent on trying to figure out what's going to happen with the brands. They just figure out how to rip out costs. Unfortunately, merger deals are done around boardrooms with lawyers and investment bankers, and they don't really understand what they're doing with the brands. Here's an example of brand extension versus line extension. Brand extension is where you apply your brand to different products. They're not really associated with the product. Ferrari, what do they make? Cars. What Ferrari's done is applied their brand to a whole bunch of different products rather than the same product. Aston Martin also made cars, but what Aston Martin is trying to do is a line extension, and it's weakening their brand. I'll show you exactly what I mean in a tip. Ferrari apply their brand to a whole bunch of different... Do they look like cars? So that's called line extension. Brand extension. What they're doing is applying it to leather goods and watches and colognes. $2.5 billion come from the cars. $1.5 billion comes from that stuff for Ferrari, from licensing. What Aston's having to do, and unfortunately they're having to do this, is they're trying to introduce this. Yeah. Do you think that's going to affect their... That's called... what's that called? That's a line extension. Yeah. That's a Toyota Signet. It's got the grille. It's got the logo. Is that going to affect this car, do you think? Unfortunately, to meet the EU standards of 130 gram of CO2 per kilometre, they have to introduce a smaller model just to meet those emission standards. Why can Ferrari get away with it? It's owned by Fiat, and then so it's already under the emission standards. Yeah. But that's really going to damage the brand by doing a line extension.
I thought though that they didn't have to sell that; they just had to have it available.
Is that the? I think it'd be done on sales value. Is that right? You just have to have it available.
I thought it just had to have it available to buy.
So in the showroom, you've got to have this stuck in the middle of everything else. Yeah. I might actually go and have a look at that and see if that's true. And you saw it with the Porsche too. They tried to do a line extension similar to this and go down market with those models. It just does not work. So for services, if we are a retailer, yeah, let's have a look at that. The competitive advantage in retail is have a great product range like Bunnings, be the best value too, have a low price, have location everywhere, which is the organisation. These two are product, that's the organisation, and sometimes the smaller retailers need to be responsive. So one-stop shopping, close to the customer, easy parking, etc. The retailers, that's their main competitive advantages there. Yeah? If it's small, responsiveness. If you're a wholesaler, it's pretty much the same as retail, but they add in relationships because it's business to business. So you've got to have good relationships built. So that's your the wholesaler's competitive advantage. Let's have a look at service. Service, you've got very little. Remember I said product, it was all red for product. With service, that's about the only thing that you can attach to the service. The rest is the organisation. The rest of the words are related to the organisation. So positioning and marketing a service company is a lot harder work. For instance, Qantas rely on security, reliability, their distribution and their brand. And that's all to do with the organisation rather than the product itself. So we'll finish off on changing positions, then we'll have a break. The worst thing you can do when you're marketing is to keep changing all the time. And marketing managers love coming in and tinkering with the position and changing things. The customer doesn't get sick of it, the marketing manager usually gets sick of it. A guy called Howard Head in 1948 started Head Skis. What he did was he took up skiing as a sport. It was on these old wooden skis. He found he wasn't very good at skiing. So he decided, let's make these skis out of a lighter, more flexible material. And he developed Head Skis off a hobby. He then retired, sold his ski business, took up tennis, found he wasn't very good. So then he decided, hey, how come we have to use these rackets of this size? Why can't we use bigger size rackets? So he bought the Prince manufacturing company and put out the Cheetah's racket, a slightly oversized racket. It's really interesting that every time he finds a hobby that he's useless at, he goes and makes a lot of money. Anyway, he captured 30% of the high quality racket market by releasing that oversized racket in '84. What's he done there? Which word? A feature, which is the size, yeah. So Cheese Brapons then bought the Prince Racket Company. What do Cheese Brapons make? Ladies? No, not cheese. Cheeseborough is actually a suburb in the US where it's located. What do they make? They make base cream. Yeah? How much do you think they know about the racket market? Not much. So what they then did was brought out a standard size racket as well as the oversized racket, and they lost market share. They changed their position. So once you get a good position, don't change it. In the US, in the automobile market in the 60s, they were dominated by these well-chromed large vehicles. Volkswagen was the only thing in the market that was small, and that was their ads, think small, yeah, with the Volkswagen Beetle. What are they promoting there? A feature which is small, absolutely. So what do they do next? What did they bring out next? They've dominated the small car market in the 60s in the US. What did they bring out next? The Combi, absolutely. They came out with the Combi van. Is that small?
No.
So immediately they're starting to dilute their position. They had the small car market, but the Japanese then took it. So then they followed it with another small car, not so small, it was called the 411. Then they followed that with a Dasher, and the marketing people really came out with a great slogan for the thing. Anyway, Volkswagen lost their small car position to the Japanese. They should have stayed just small and they would have dominated the market. Volvo's done it too. For years they produced tank-like cars. They looked like tank, their styling was like a tank. And they were always safe. BMW and Mercedes tried to attack them on safety. couldn't take it away from Volvo because it was built like a tank. How safe does that look now? So they're destroying their own safety position. Have a break with me.
Oh, yeah.